dogs vs. cats rivalry has gone on since the beginning of time. Alright, so it may not have started that long ago, but who really knows? I want to see some documentation. Anyway, Rockin, a game from 1991 by Atlas, took this feud and expanded on it slightly to create a fairly interesting platformer. You play as Willie, a cat wielding a punch glove, a device that extends like a boxing glove or can catch objects. His girlfriend, Jill, was catnapped by a local crime lord named Muggsy, who happens to be a dog. Now Willie must run around New York to try and find Jill and defeat Muggsy. The strange thing is that the game is presented in channels, not unlike a TV. Basically, when you start the game, you can choose from 6 different channels. You have stages 1 through 4, a shopping channel, and a bonus channel. The 7th channel, which is stage 5, is unavailable until channels 1 through 4 are completed. Before I go on to the actual game, let's jump into the 2 channels that aren't main levels. The shopping channel allows you to purchase a few new weapons and extra lives. In addition, you can buy a hover shoots kind of device that lets you jump gaps a bit easier. However, you don't get an upgraded weapon at all when using this. As for the bonus stages, there are 3 of them. They each vary in entry fees and possible rewards. Roulette is $50, but allows you to have 2 chances to win money or extra lives. Basically, you spin around on the board and press A to stop Willie on a spot. You win whatever the space includes. Basketball can be fairly rewarding since it's the cheapest available bonus game, but it's difficult to actually get down. You need to spin around on the pole and try to fling Willie into a basket. You only have 2 chances to get into one. Once Willie is in the air, he can collide with a basket a maximum of 3 times before it's considered a failed try, and he plummets to the bottom of the screen. The best game, though, is the pipe toss. Willie has to grab the balls that fall from the pipe. He then needs to throw them through the pipes on the right-hand side of the screen to obtain the money on it. The game ends when the timer runs out or you successfully score 8 times. So yes, the game itself costs $100, but if you're good at this, the pipe toss can reward $560. Not too shabby since it's actually really easy to get the rhythm down. Okay, enough of the bonus stuff, let's move on to the actual game itself. As I already mentioned at the beginning, it's a platformer and Willie goes from one side of the screen to the other, defeating any enemies that he encounters. It's nothing you've never seen before, but what makes the game a little bit unique is Willie's punch glove. Yes, it's a weapon, but it also doubles as a tool to assist with making the more difficult jumps. By pressing B once, Willie attacks with a glove. If you hold B down, he'll attack, but then the glove will extend a short distance away from Willie and become an open hand, allowing him to grab objects. This isn't used too often, but the attack itself can be used to not only defeat his enemies, but also grab onto ledges and other pieces of the environment. So why would you want to do this? Well, Willie has the ability to swing around with his punch glove, allowing him to reach areas that you can't by jumping. It's all momentum based, so the height and speed you'll attain depends on when you release your grip on the ledge. In addition, Willie can use the punch glove to bounce off of walls and floors. Simply enough, you can just aim the glove at the wall you want to propel off of and fire. To get additional airtime, you can jump and punch the ground. You don't need this much in the beginning of the game, although you can use it as an attack. In the final stages though, you should be proficient at it to prevent major damage. I'll get to that a bit later though. Let's move on to the stages themselves. Each level, or channel if you will, has a different scene to it. Channel 1 is your standard cityscape. Level 2 is an air-themed level, Stage 3 is your carnival stage, and the 4th level is a western-themed level. Once you complete all of these, Stage 5 is unlocked, which is basically a culmination of each stage. Each of the first 4 levels includes a mini-boss and the main boss. Although you can tackle any of the stages in whatever order you prefer, I usually completed it in order, simply because the first stage really is the easiest. After completing one of the stages, I played the pipe toss till I had enough money to buy all the possible weapons. Then I continued on with the game. Speaking about the weapons, I may as well talk about those real quick. There are only really 3 total weapons plus the hover shoes. These weapons include a twin ball firing option, which fires, well, twin balls along the punch glove. The bomb fires a short-range explosive. I don't find these 2 options very useful, because the range just isn't there. Instead, I usually use the hover shoes, because it makes many of the jumps a bit easier. Sure, I lose additional weapon power, but it's often not needed. Finally, you can purchase something that completely replaces the punch glove when selected. It's a spiked ball. When using this, you do about double the damage, and can also use it to punch many enemy projectiles away, therefore acting as a sort of shield. The catch with it is that you can't latch on the ledges with it, so if there's an area you need to get to, you'll need to swap weapons, if only temporarily. In addition to your standard walk from the left to the right, you also have a few vertical stages that test you on your punch glove grabbing skills. These are probably the hardest point of the game, although that's not really saying much. The game is really that easy. Even Stage 5, which mashes everything together in one final heave-ho and forces you to fight every mini-boss and boss for a second time, isn't difficult because it's nothing you haven't seen before. In fact, one of the mini-bosses, the feather headdress-wearing shaman-style dog, is even easier. In the Western Stage, this mini-boss calls forth the rainstorm, which pushes you back near 2 pits. In the meantime, as you fight to attack the mini-boss, 2 of his henchmen take turns to run at you. In the second meeting with this boss, there's no cliffs, so that's a hazard that just disappeared. You'd think that this should be the other way around, that the harder forms should be later in the game, but it's not in this case. In fact, that's really the biggest problem with Rockin' Cats. It's way too frickin' easy. From stage 1 to 5, it's easily completable within an hour. Even the final boss, Muggsy, is really easy, although he takes about 50 hits. After defeating him, you see a small cutscene where Muggsy gets thrown to the moon. You'll then see a small scene with Willie reuniting with Jill, and then the credits will roll. However, that's not all. After watching all this, a final showdown will unlock, where you have to go through 5 more rooms of hell to meet up with Muggsy in one final showdown. Here's where the game goes from stupidly easy to controller throwing difficult. You start at the bottom of a sewer area with only a few lives, no cash, and no upgrades, regardless of what you had when you finished off Muggsy the first time. In a nutshell, you get only the basic punch glove and a few lives. These rooms are challenging just because it tests everything you've done in the game already, but especially your skills with the punch glove. The opening sewer area will test your punch glove swing skills. The odd thing is that it took me a while to figure out that the hook on the very top is very touchy, so you have to grab onto the exact area, otherwise you'll miss and plummet a small distance. The second room is simply a bunch of spikes on the bottom with a few conveyor belts and pogo dogs. Since you don't have the hover shoes, the only way to proceed is to use the punch glove to bounce off the spikes and the dogs. You can attempt to run on the spikes a bit, but you won't last long doing it. The third room tests your swinging abilities again. Now though, the game adds in bats that send their babies at you. If you misjudge anything, you'll probably take some damage or fall, losing a bit of your progress. Area 4 is probably the most frustrating. You have to swing from a few valve wheels. Any sort of bad jump will cause you to fuzz into the water and immediately lose a life. There's a few enemies that appear here too, but they're not the immediate threat. Area 5 is a good break, only requiring you to climb a wall by bouncing off of it and dodging a few oranges. When you enter the exit here, you fight Muggsy one final time. This is a bit trickier, due to the fact that you don't have any upgrades. It's still fairly easy if you're careful. The thing that pisses me off is that when you defeat Muggsy here, you get the exact same ending that you did previously. Why isn't there a new ending? There should be a good ending after completing this agonizing secret final stage. Not the exact same ending you receive when completing that regular easy game. It's really a slap in the face. The visuals of the game are fairly good. There's no parts of the game that really look off, although the areas of the game where the darkness appears is pretty crappy, just like Linus Spacehead's bullshit lightning. Oh, and the supposed boulders in the Wild West level look like large lethal oranges. Other than that, there's some good details for the graphics. The music is also pretty good, but much of it is pretty repetitive, which is really a shame. Most notable is the Wild West opening theme, which is your standard Western dual track, but looped. Come on, Atlas, you could have expanded that much longer. Thankfully, the rooms aren't that long, and each usually has a different soundtrack to it. Rockin' Cats is a good game, but perhaps too easy. Of course, the secret stage is brutal, but it's a bit too late for the difficulty to start to curve. However, although it's simple, it's still really fun. I think a sequel would have been pretty cool, but to my knowledge, that there never really was one. The game simply takes good use of the Cats vs. Dogs theme, and for that, I commend it. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.